You weren't really thinking about his age if you weren't looking too closely at the fact that he's, you could almost see his voice breaking. He was so young.
Welcome one and all to Ramble React. Some more juicy Champions League action, Jim, for us to suckle on. It was a night of high drama, as it tends to be in the latter stages of the Champions League. You watched one game and had a beady eye on the other. And I did the same. Your game, I think, was a little bit better than mine because you weren't watching Atletico Madrid second half performance. So you had PSG 2, Barcelona 3. The story of the game, Barcelona were 1-0 up at half time, and then PSG sort of hit back, and then Barcelona ended up winning it. Did you see that coming, Jim?
You know what I did from the first half. There was a strange kind of feeling that after about 25 minutes or so, Barcelona had felt PSG out and thought, you know what, this is here to be won. So once they got their first goal, they really kind of started to assert a bit of authority and a little bit of confidence. And the sort of the two goals that PSG scored were pretty quick fire. And as you alluded to earlier, we know from this stage of the competition that turnarounds happen and games tend to be of high quality and of high drama. So actually, that did seem the most likely outcome for large parts of the game, as good as PSG's two goals were. Very, very impressive. It's a great mixture of youth and experience in the lineups, and it led to a sort of very exciting, very unpredictable game. And I think back to the story before the game of Luis Enrique saying that he has Luis Enrique saying that he has more Barca DNA than Xavi, a little bit of mind games. But it was Xavi that came out on top. And after a performance like that, you can see why Barcelona want to keep him and why they're trying to convince him to stay on, because they look really, really coherent, despite the fact they had two children in the starting lineup. And the fact that, like Pedri coming on and seeming like this wise old veteran, setting up Rafinha's brilliant second goal, which was possibly the goal of the game, but Dembele's was brilliant as well, is emblematic of how well he's getting them gelling. I think it's a really, really professional and difficult away performance that he's managed to pull off there. And so in answer to your question, I'm not surprised that they turned that around.
Yeah, Xavi was wearing a Stone Island jumper. Something that in this country, certainly, we do associate with football hooliganism, or perhaps we did of yesteryear. Do you think he wore that?
We might pronounce his name slightly differently.
We might. Do you think
you
think he wore that to try and psych out Luis Enrique? Because, as I say, he was a bit patronising, one might say, before this game. And he thought, I'll show you, mate. I'll get the old Stoney out.
Absolutely, yeah. Probably had an XL bully in the tunnel.
And then unconfirmed reports that he battered him in the car park after.
Yeah, he knows.
Yeah, if that did happen...
He knows what happened in that car park.
He knows. If that did happen, we were unaware of it, and obviously it's not nice for grown men to fight. Well, you mentioned that children were playing, Jim. I mean, you are absolutely right. Lamine Yamal became the youngest player to appear in a Champions League quarter-final at 16 years and 272 days. I mean, literally a child. He's not 18 yet. Quite incredible. And Pau Kubasi became the second youngest player to ever start a Champions League quarter-final. Incredible, as one of their former managers once said.
It is incredible, and he didn't really put a foot wrong. He was up against Mbappé and Dembele and various other players of huge quality, and he looked completely unfazed by it. Like he was in direct contact with those two particular players quite a lot, and you sort of you weren't really thinking about his age if you weren't looking too closely at the fact that he's, you could almost see his voice breaking. He was so young. It's very, very impressive. I know there's an element of necessity from Barcelona bringing these young players through, but they seem to be extremely lucky in the timing of it, because there are some real quality ones.
Yeah, he's had, I think, 11 appearances in La Liga this season. He's been called up by Spain a couple of times. From what you saw of him tonight, would you have seen enough to sort of be able to tell what kind of defender he is? I mean, presumably pretty solid and handy.
Yeah, I mean, he looked pretty comfortable with the ball at his feet. He looked very, very unflappable, very unfazed. I don't think he's the sort of player that's going to sort of panic. He was pretty press resistant as well. From what I saw, was able to get the ball out of his feet very quickly when he had men on him. So I think he is going to be a sort of possibly a sort of Gerard Piqué style player, if that's not too obvious a comparison to draw. There's a definite feel of La Masia there. Very, very comfortable with the ball at his feet. Really, really enjoyable. And I think the young players were a huge part of this game. Bradley Barcola was really, really exciting for PSG as well, because when he came on, things looked a bit different. Barcelona kind of lost their composure a little bit. They weren't so sure of PSG, and obviously they get those 2 quick-fire goals. Ousmane Dembele's goal was fantastic. I think it's only his second goal for PSG, which is surprising. But he lashed it so hard with his left foot. It was really, really brilliant finish. And then obviously the second goal was a sort of, happened very, very quickly after that. A great finish from Vitinha as well after a nice move. But Barcelona just sort of, they wised up a bit after that. They tightened up. Obviously, Pedri came on, is the sort of player already at 21 that can impact games in a situation like that. And the finish that Rafinha pulled off with his left foot, the outside of it was just absolutely delicious.
Yeah. It was Patrick Bamford told him everything he needs to know about volley. I would say so. Yeah, Ousmane Dembele. One can forget that he has played, and obviously is currently playing for three of the teams that were playing tonight in the Champions League. Former Dortmund and Barcelona man, of course. But yeah, it doesn't score many goals for such an attacking player with a lot of pace, and he's played for big side. It's strange, but he got a beauty tonight. But it wasn't enough to get them even a draw. Jim Campbell, of course.
Gianluigi Donnarumma was a part of that. He looked a bit suspect all night, really, to be honest. He looked a little bit panicky coming for crosses, and just didn't look sure, and that fed into his defenders, and they just looked a little bit nervy and a little bit like they weren't entirely sure of what the plan was.
Yeah, it's funny with Donnarumma, isn't it? Because when he burst onto the scene in Italy, massive guy, looks incredible. A few years ago won the Euros with Italy, and in fact when it went to penalties in the final, of course, sorry to bring this memory up, but everyone, or let's talk about the semi-final though. Whenever it went to penalties with Italy, everyone thought, look at the size of this guy, he's a brilliant goalkeeper, he's going to be the difference. And he goes to PSG for a huge move, of course, money-wise, and one of the biggest clubs in European football right now, you'd argue. He's not spoken about these days in the kind of terms that, for example, Manuel Neuer was, perhaps still is, maybe, but certainly was the peak of his career, if you could call it that. You think about the likes of Iker Casillas as well, to a lesser extent maybe David De Gea or Thibaut Courtois, these kind of goalkeepers. Maybe he was a couple of years ago, but I feel it's been maybe a little bit of a drop-off with Donnarumma. I don't know. Yeah,
I think. I mean, this wasn't at play tonight, but I've seen a lot of criticism of Donnarumma saying that he's he's perhaps not as good with his feet as modern goalkeepers are expected to be, and he might be a little bit unlucky in the timing of how the game has changed around that. But I think you're right, and it's part of it maybe that big players get lost at PSG a little bit as well in terms of their reputation, because you expect them to be winning, and they're perhaps
it happened to Neymar, Jim.
Less visible like that. It sure did.
But at least Donnarumma's got a big move to Saudi in him, so good luck to him if he does indeed do that. It was nice to see Andreas Christensen getting the winning goal, the former Chelsea man.
Warren Zaire-Emery, another very, very talented young player, was marking him and didn't do the best job, but he's 17 and he looks 25. I think he's going to be fine. Looks a real talent. But yeah, it was nice to see Christensen to pop up with a winner there. I think Barcelona deserved it as well.
Yeah, and
there was a sense that they were the authority in the game.
Yeah, because as you say, that quick double PSG got, you thought to yourself, oh, okay, because we look at this side of the draw, and it really is up for grabs. I mean, the other side of the draw, Man City will be favourites. If Real Madrid beat them, they'll be favourites.
Yeah.
Arsenal. If Arsenal were in this side of the draw, I'd be thinking, I'll tell you what, this is a wonderful opportunity. Bayern, they're not the side they were, but they've still got a bit of quality there and so on. Whereas this side, it's difficult to call. We put out a poll on Twitter, and we'll get to the result at the end of the pod. But it's hard to call out of these four who would be the best team, the dominant team. But PSG, you would think, with Mbappé and there and other players, when they go 2-1 up, you'd think to yourself, now they're going to go, right, we're going to go and get this. But of course, that's not how it turns out. And you mentioned Pedri coming on 51 seconds later, provides an incredible assist for Rafinha to get that equalising goal.
It's the same old story for PSG, isn't it? Over and over again, the sort of the obsession with the Champions League that came with their sort of like essentially Parisian Galacticos era was something that was probably quite damaging to them, and they seem to be moving away from that mentality in terms of the team that they assemble domestically. But I think that kind of that pressure. It feels like it's still there on them in the Champions League in a way that it kind of isn't with other teams. City have got that monkey off their back. They don't really think about that now. They seem like the protagonists in the entire competition now. PSG are desperate for that moment, and they look as far away from it as they've ever been, really, based on tonight. This is a Barcelona team that's had a lot of problems. We know all about them. The manager wants to leave at the end of the season. They're trying to make him stay. There's a lot of young players in there. It should have been an opportunity for PSG to go, you know what? We are the authority here, and they couldn't do it for very long, essentially.
No, that's it. And I mean, it seems crazy that Xavi, you think he would be there for years and years, but mind you, that's such a madhouse, isn't it? Especially at this moment, he's probably burnt out, isn't he? Whatever he said, and just thinks, sod this. But what that does mean, though, is that maybe, as we've seen with Klopp's Liverpool this season, obviously Klopp has had much more longevity at Liverpool and much more sort of success, if you like. But maybe there is an element of, to coin a popular sporting phrase, one last dance with old Xavi. And perhaps Barcelona, you talk about the pressure, Barcelona maybe enjoy being, well, in this time, maybe underdogs, perhaps. Not a lot of is expected of them. I mean, I know they're second in the league and they're doing okay, but Madrid have a commanding lead. At this moment in time, it's not a vintage Barcelona side, even though they've got a bit of quality in there, of course. I don't know. Maybe there's a bit of freedom you could argue that they're playing with here.
Yeah, I mean, both of them really took responsibility in their roles tonight as well. Lamine Yamal was involved in the first goal, and he actually reminds me a little bit of Mbappé, really, and it might be his sort of physical gait. He's very tall, very long legs. It's not the most insightful take you're going to hear this week, but he is clearly going to be an absolute superstar as long as he can, stay fit and stay on the path that he's clearly on. I think you're right. Barcelona have been in this situation like this before as well. They're one of the biggest clubs in the world, an absolute super club. But if you think back to where they were when Frank Rijkaard took over, people were talking about what a disaster it was and how Barcelona fading out of relevance. What can possibly be done to turn this around? And of course, he did turn that around, and went on to create what at the time we thought might be their best ever team before a certain Pep Guardiola came along. So, it's not uncharted territory for Barcelona to find themselves in this situation. So you're right, they'll probably be enjoying it in quite a throwback way for people of a certain vintage. I think one of the things I've really enjoyed about tonight, because I didn't watch the other game as closely as you did, Marcus, but every tie is still in play.
Yes.
And that's great. That's what we want.
Well, it's interesting you say that, actually, because we've seen, and perhaps we'll get this in the semi-final, who knows, but we have seen a fair few times in recent seasons of the Champions League where you think it's dead and then you have a roaring comeback, which have been much more common in recent years in football than they previously were. So but I think it is nice that they are poised. I wonder if the away goal rule's got anything to do with that. Are
maybe
teams less cautious?
I think there's something to be said for that, because I used to enjoy the away goal rule, but I think I probably just enjoyed football. I'm quite easily tricked by things like that. I've seen a lot of movies that are definitely terrible when I see them again at home, and I think it's because I was just having a nice time eating popcorn. I can be very easily tricked.
Have you got an example of a film? I'm sure people are dying to
the last Matrix movie, terrible. Enjoyed it because I had a big bowl of popcorn. And I think the away goals rule was similar because I was tricked by enjoying football. But how dead would the Arsenal Bayern tie seem? If Bayern had two away goals, it's a really, really different thing. And actually, I think it's just more enjoyable when teams have a way back in.
Yeah.
I guess the flip side of it is that a less fancy team get an opportunity to go through, but
True. I mean, so are we saying that those in charge of the game should tinker more with the ruls? Is that, I think so. Maybe. Maybe corners should count for something. I don't know.
We there was a point where we didn't have crossbars. And I think we can all agree that they're a good addition.
One man who has worn both shirts of Paris Saint-Germain and Barcelona, and there has been a few, but one man was in the stands to watch the game. It was Ronaldinho.
Nice to see him.
Oh, come on. What did you think when you saw that guy?
I was just delighted he was there because, let's be honest, he's having a great time right now. As we record this, Ronaldinho is out on the tiles in Paris. Just what a notion. That'll help me sleep better tonight.
Yeah, let's hope we don't hear anything about it, because that means it's passed without incident.
Yeah.
Okay. Even though I'd love to know, I don't want to know.
Secure for FOMO. If you're ever having a night where you're thinking, should I go out tonight? I'm kind of a bit antsy, but it's cold, or I don't have any money, or etc. etc. Whatever the reason is, think, well, whatever I would be doing, Ronaldinho's out there having a better time. I'll just be happy for him.
He certainly is. He certainly is. Well, he saw a game with 5 goals, which is quite impressive. I saw a game with 3 goals. Atletico 2.
Not bad. Borussia. Not as good, but not bad.
Indeed, Borussia Dortmund 1, of course. I thought that Atletico were going to... I thought they were going to win 3 or 4. The way they started the game, they just went at them. Now, I know that we've seen Atletico do this before, but I really thought that they were not going to take the foot off the gas until they got the 3rd or maybe even the 4th. And then, of course, as the game pans out, it's like, oh, yeah, I am still watching Simeone's Atletico Madrid.
Yeah.
But, without doing them a disservice, they have won the game and they look really, really good in the opening kind of exchanges. And really that first half, I would say. I mean, they went up 1-0 just after 4 minutes. Rodrigo de Paul, Messi's man, Messi's kind of right-hand man or bouncer on and off the pitch in the World Cup, of course, in 2022. He looks beautiful now, by the way. I didn't remember him being a particularly attractive man when they were playing in Qatar, but I don't know, you slick back the hair, you put an Alice band on someone, and I tell you what, bang, they're at least an 8, maybe even a 9 out of 10, Jim.
Yeah, got those highlights in there as well. I think he's been inspired by Antoine Griezmann because he had pretty much the same hair for a while, but Griezmann's now gone for a sort of like Charlie's Angel style bouffant, which is absolutely magnificent.
It's a bit fluffy, isn't it?
It is.
It wasn't one of Maradona's nicknames El Pelusa, which I think translates to like the fluff or something.
I really hope so.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of it about tonight. João Felix, obviously, of Atletico Madrid, but online at Barcelona, came off the bench. And that is a man who is not interested in hair products.
Yeah.
Certainly not wax.
As a man who
very fluffy,
who often ducks hair products, every now and then I dabble. I'm all for this. I really am. But yeah, so that was lovely. And he finished his... It was his move, wasn't it? He closed down the play. I mean, Dortmund, come on. It's that thing where teams playing out from the back, of course, it's all the rage these days. It's all the rage. But so casual. And it's like, you're playing Atletico Madrid. The game is 4 minutes old.
Yeah.
You know they're going to hound you. That's Rodrigo de Paul, for crying out loud. Everyone's pressing. Pop bang, lovely. And de Paul, lovely little flick to just sort of knock it past the keeper. It was an incredible start. But Atletico, when they're like that, they look imperious in the Champions League, and they're just going at it. The second goal is in the post. It's coming, and it took nearly half an hour, which was surprising because it was all Atletico. And that man, Antoine Griezmann, with a lovely little assist, and take nothing away from Lino, who beautifully controlled it and slotted it home. And at 2-0, Jim, I honestly thought to myself, bloody hell.
It's on.
We're watching the team here are going to go to the final. I fancy them against anyone on this side of the draw. I wouldn't fancy them against Manchester City, or probably not Real Madrid either, although that would be quite something if those two met again in the final.
God, imagine Antoine Griezmann winning a Champions League would be great.
Yeah.
As I've mentioned a few times, he's probably my favourite active player at the moment. It's just absolute joy and absolute magician.
Yeah.
And as you say, he had a big part in that second goal. It would be great for him to get that towards the end of his career.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be even pleased with Simeone, and I shouldn't be pleased for Simeone, but I bloody well out. I mean, Atletico would have kind of ruined their sort of underdoggy, even though they've obviously had good success, but that's still that sort of underdog. We're not Real Madrid and Barcelona, but we're going toe to toe with them. But that slight kind of underdog, maybe a lot of people have have enjoyed them, despite the football maybe not being the most entertaining at times, but they've enjoyed them in the last, I don't know, what is it, 10 years or so since Simeone's in charge. And then when they signed up for the Super League and stuff, it's like, lads, what are you doing? That's not you. But anyway, that's all by the by now, of course. But I would be happy to see them finally win the Champions League, because it is the only thing, really, that's missing from Simeone's trophy haul as Atletico Madrid manager. They've had phenomenal success under him, and having reached the final twice. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's keep it with this match. But yes, so 2-0 up and cruising. And again, like I just think if they'd have gone for it, Dortmund looked so rattled. I mean, they looked like.
Was there a sense then that they took the foot off the gas deliberately to try and just hold the lead?
When we got into the second half, I remember thinking, okay, out come the second half. What's going to happen here? What are they going to do? And I was still expectant, and I thought, oh yes, of course, it's this routine, because they're probably thinking, bloody hell, normally we do this at 1-0. We've got two of the buggers, But I really thought, because Dortmund looked so rattled and they looked rabbit in headlights, but then they made a couple of substitutions. Julian Brandt came on, who made a little bit of a difference. But even then, they looked pretty safe. Sebastian Haller scored, which I think the last time he scored for Dortmund, I think it was in August or something. He really hasn't scored a lot of goals this season, although technically I think it's his 12th goal in 13 Champions League games, because he's played for a while.
Time at Ajax.
Yeah, but he took his goal very, very well. But it was quite unexpected, and suddenly Dortmund were flying forward. Sancho was involved in a couple. I think Sancho did okay actually, even though they didn't sort of create too much. They hit the bar, and then with nearly the last touch of the game, Julian Brandt, he's unmarked in the box. It was a difficult one to take, so I think he did pretty well, but he hits the post ultimately, and as I say, Atletico just get over the line in terms of the first leg. And I thought to myself, like, lads, you really could have been 3 or 4 up there, but Atletico will Atletico.
Yeah, this way they get to draw 1-1 in Dortmund. Scoring in like the 89th minute, and really enjoy just absolutely crushing Dortmund's heart.
Yeah, true enough.
That's what they're about.
Yeah, I'm the party pooper here, Jim. You're absolutely right. Why should I try and ruin that second leg for them? That Atletico Madrid have never lost the Champions League knockout game at home under Simeone, which is pretty incredible to say the least. I mean, they weren't in danger of losing the title. I mean, obviously they may well have ended up drawing it, but they didn't. But Simeone, like, considering how long he's been at Atletico, the man is still the king of that place. I mean, he's full of beans, isn't he? And we saw this on the touchline when I honestly thought he was going to chin. It wasn't Edin Terzic, the Dortmund manager. I think it was one of the staff. I mean, I don't think it was the fourth official. We didn't actually.
I looked over and he was shouting at a man. Yeah. I thought, this is going pretty much as I expected it to.
Yeah, exactly. But he really I think he went to push him and really kind of right, let's have it. And then he kind of remembered where he was and what he's doing, and he just about held back, showing quite incredible discipline. But I thought to myself, if that was in the car park, my goodness, that other man might have been in a lot of trouble, although he looked like he could take care of himself. As long as Simeone's in the dugout, that's how he'll operate, of course. But going back to Jadon Sancho, the aforementioned Jadon Sancho, Manchester United are reportedly demanding at least €40 million for him, with Dortmund wanting to sign him permanently.
It doesn't seem an outrageous amount of money, really, in the current climate. The fact that, United bought him from Dortmund shouldn't really come into it, I suppose. So
it is a bit of a signal.
Is he worth 40 million based on tonight?
Yeah, based on tonight, perhaps not. But I think that it's a bit of a signal for Man United, considering how much they signed him for, and then Dortmund are going to get him at a cut price. It's a bit like Mr. Burns selling the nuclear power plant or something, and then going, I'll give you the half of that back. Now it's not kind of working out for you.
Yeah, and of course they pretty much are owned by Mr. Burns, aren't they? Or partially, at least. It's a good comparison.
It's very, who's Smithers in that? I don't know. Maybe Eric Ten Hag.
Brailsford.
Yeah. Oh dear. Well, yeah. So look, I think we all want to see Jadon Sancho back at Borussia Dortmund because he clearly likes it there, and they like him, and he played the best football of his career. And at Manchester United, it just spectacularly hasn't worked out. I mean, for the price tag. I mean, I know Pogba had a huge price tag when he went there, and I don't get too off track. We'll get back to Atletico Madrid in a sec, but at least Pogba had, he won. What did he win? The Europa League. He won probably a couple of other trophies as well. Had some moments, like he showed flashes. Sancho, it's just.
Yeah, it's a tough environment to go into, isn't it? And this is exactly what all the sort of new appointments are trying to change.
Yeah,
I think they're obviously going to have to cut their losses on Sancho at some point. If they can get 40 million, they'll be delighted with it. And I think it's a smart amount to be looking at, really.
Well, I do, and but it's great to see Sancho playing for Borussia Dortmund in the latter stages of the Champions League because, again, we know the quality that Sancho has, and just because he hasn't, displayed that for Manchester United, whether that's his fault more or the club's fault more or a bit of both, whatever it is, you don't want to see a player with that kind of talent just sitting, being left to rot really at the club because he wasn't even playing, for crying out loud. So, yeah, so good to see him. Dortmund are in the tie. One might argue, and I was certainly arguing that they shouldn't be, but they are. And they'll go into that second leg with a bit of hope, because we know that the Dortmund, they're not brilliant this season. Dortmund, they're not being particularly good in the Bundesliga, but that home stadium, their tradition, all the kind of cliches, they'll think that they might be able to do it. Now, I want to bring attention to something Atletico Madrid midfielder Marcos Llorente revealed earlier this week. He said, "I will live and die with the Paleolithic diet." Now, the Paleolithic diet is also referred to as the caveman or Stone Age diet, which includes lean meats, fish, fruits, veg, nuts, and seeds. And has Diego Simeone got them like foraging out there or something? Is this like?
Maybe.
Yeah.
If there's anybody who's going to lead his team like it's a tribe, it is going to be Simeone, isn't it? And you're not going to cross the guy, so you simply aren't going to eat those quavers. You're going to live like a caveman, however much you might not want.
Yeah, definitely.
Might not want to. Yeah, it's Llorente also said he can't even look at processed foods, which to me is advantage Dortmund because just wave your bratwurst.
Yeah,
get everyone waving a sausage. A proper processed Frankfurter in that crowd is going to put him right off.
A big meaty sausage, Jim. You're right. Get your meaty sausages out. For Simeone. Speaking of men who played for Atletico and perhaps forage for food once in a while, Diego Costa was up to his old tricks this week in a game for Grêmio. He headbutted an opponent, only got a yellow card.
Yeah, it was a footballer's headbutt though.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones where it's just I'm nuzzling you as much as I'm headbutting you.
Yeah, I think the only proper headbutt I can think of memory, I'm sure there's some that I'm forgetting here, was old Duncan Ferguson. Who went to prison for it. So maybe that's why we don't see them anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want that, in theory.
What about Dion Dublin headbutted Robbie Savage, didn't he? Do you remember that? Dion Dublin's never been angry before. Your
memory is incredible. Little concertina folder full of footballers headbutting other footballers. You just rummage around in.
It's all coming back to me now.
At 11 o'clock at night, which I remember recording this.
True, but then Robbie Savage was on Co-Coms tonight, and I just remember thinking, something. Yeah, is there a?
I would like to nut this man.
Is there a memory?
I think someone did.
It was Dion Dublin. Because Dion Dublin's a nice guy. I've had the pleasure of meeting him. Even on the football pitch.
Was there any threat? Do you think of him dropping one on you?
No. It'd be quite odd, wouldn't it, if he did? Almost to be admired.
Well, we don't know these people.
Yeah. Any of the steps leading all the way up to your head. Yeah, I think for those who've ever seen them, what was he on? Not Grand Designs.
Is it? It's something
Homes
like
Under
the Hammer, isn't it? Because it's repossessed houses, which are then sold on the TV by Dion Dublin in the very low points in a lot of people's lives, I'd imagine. It's the world. It's a very strange world that we live in.
Yeah, it's odd what life can throw up. Is the takeaway here? Oh, dearie me. Right, I think it's time we get to the poll. we ran a poll asking you, our dear listeners and followers of us on X, which apparently used to be called Twitter, but I'm not having any of that. Which of the 4 teams in action tonight will get to the final at Wembley? Wembley, yes, the home of football and this season's Champions League. I have the results. Barcelona topped the bill with 47%. Now, I wonder if people had gone for that before tonight's game, but we asked you after the game, so that's what we're dealing with here. So 47%, Atletico Madrid 36%, PSG with just 10%, and Dortmund with just 7%. I voted for Atletico Madrid because I had to vote for somebody, and I don't trust Atletico Madrid to put that second leg away, but I trust Dortmund even less to get something out of it. PSG, Barcelona, I think I went with my heart more than my head, really. Jim, I'm going to put you on the spot. Which of the 4 teams do you think are going to reach the final?
I think the 2 Spanish teams will meet in the semi, and you would fancy Barcelona, especially as there's this really strange thing where João Felix is sort of the greatest player in the history of the sport when he plays against Atletico Madrid. Although I'm not entirely clear on the rules of the Champions League. He might not actually be able to play against his parent club. But if he is available, then I think that would be a big factor. And I think, Barcelona look the most likely from what I've seen tonight. Right. It's funny, like, none of them feel like they're going to be the winner. You're absolutely right. It feels like the other side is where that's going to come from. Yeah, true enough. Although, obviously, 2 of those teams are tangling with each other. In the form of City and Madrid. Very much so, very much so. All right, everybody. Well, we're not sure, but we will find out in due course. We're not a supercomputer, Marcus. We cannot predict the future. Well, if we were a supercomputer, Jim, and if you were a supercomputer, you just chuck out an opinion now, because you can change it when things happen. All right, well, I guarantee when the final happens at Wembley, Arsenal will be in London. Damn right. Thank you for watching a clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an upload. A single upload. Don't miss out on the uploads. The uploads are important.